So thank you for joining us. My name is Jenn Turner. I'm the co-founder and co-director of the Center for Trauma and Embodiment, and I have been doing this work for about 20 years or so. Thank you for your interest in our certification program, Trauma Center, Trauma Sensitive Yoga, also called TCTSY. That's our model of trauma sensitive yoga. That is an evidence-based adjunctive treatment for complex trauma or chronic PTSD. And we've been working since 2002 to develop this. So this is about 22 years old, this model, and we've been evolving it and researching it and continuing to scrutinize it over that time. And, really wanting to honor and name that from the beginning, this work was intended to be and has been designed for survivors of complex trauma. So a lot of modalities for healing and treatment of complex trauma are actually developed for single incident PTSD or other anxiety disorders. It's been so important for us to center the experience and the lived experience, which of course can be wide ranging, but of the complex trauma survivor. And so we really are excited to invite you into our process. We are currently in our 11th certification program. It's a 300-hour program, and you would be joining potentially our 12th that starts in the fall. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of the curriculum overview and then hand it over to my colleague Krystal and share a bit about that. So again, as we're going through this process, feel free to use the chat. We'll try to cover everything that we can, but we all have our own unique questions and scenarios. So feel free to also ask any questions you might have in the chat as we move along here. So in terms of the curriculum program, we start in September and we have an opening weekend. Everything is virtual. And so the opening weekend is virtual, Saturday, Sunday, where we begin to do a slight review, but then dive in more deeply to some of the topics you would have covered in your foundational trainings and expand upon them. And then shortly after that, we kind of start our flow of these 2-week modules where we dive more deeply into different domains. We're still holding these underpinnings of neuroscience, attachment theory, hatha yoga, and attachment theory. And as we start out that first week, we kind of do a review and dive a bit more deeply into trauma theory. We look at some of the yogic underpinnings of TCTSY. And as we move through these weeks, you'll have, time to read and watch videos in your own time and to learn in the seminars that come through. We also will talk about the language. Language is so important. So the language that we use in TCTSY, for us, also the role of intersectionality and the understanding of systemic trauma has deepened for us over the last probably 7 years and is integrated throughout the program, but we will take a particular couple of modules where we talk specifically and dive more deeply into that topic, and how that shows up in and around our bodies, in our relationships, therapeutic relationships, and our relationship to self, how our identities and our systemic positionality impacts that. We also will try to balance this and have a focus on you as the provider and, talk about self-care, talk about the role of transference and countertransference. We'll look at the ways in which we show up in the work and how we can do that in a self-sustaining way, but also how we don't replicate trauma dynamics. We'll definitely go more deeply into neuroscience and interoception, as that is a field that has a lot of energy right now and is continuing to change as we learn more, as research deepens and expands. We'll talk about trauma and memory, dissociation and fragmentation, and how that impacts. And really kind of the way the flow of the program works is the first half of the program is a bit more academic, or I guess academic. So we're thinking kind of cognitively about these things. The second half is a lot more about the practicum. So how do we implement this? What does this look like in practice? And so there is a little bit of that flow to it as well. I'm just looking at my notes just to see an overview. We'll also talk about some of the clinical applications of this work, the yogic applications. So knowing that many of you are showing up in different scopes of work and practice in your life. And so our intention is also to think about, okay, how is this going to translate into your work and how can we support you in that? We will talk about, work with special populations like children and adolescents, work in different unique populations in calling on the experience of some of our facilitators that are out there in the world doing this work. Trying to think about what else. We also, we'll talk logistically too. How do we set up a session? How do we do an intake or enrollment process? What's the container that we create in order to try to, create a safer, braver space for people to show up and do this work in? I think that's kind of like an overview for now. I don't know if there's any question about that, but we can just kind of flow in if you want, Krystal. And if you have specific questions about, is this topic covered, feel free to throw it in the chat and respond, and I'll hand it over.
Thank you, Jen. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Krystal Pérez. I am the certification program coordinator. I've been doing this work around 7, almost 8 years now, and I'm very excited to welcome all of you. Well, Jen just mentioned the topics we will be covering and a little bit of information about how we structure the program. As she said, we're going to have a part with that we cover like the theoric underpinnings and all the theory we need to be like trauma informed and trauma sensitive. And then we're going to have the second part, which is the practical one. But let's talk a little bit about how we run the program and maybe think about how many hours on how much time you need to be part of this CERT program. We kind of estimate that you will need like around 10 to 12 hours per week to be part of this certification program. We mix recorded seminars and in-person or live meetings, which we're gonna use we're gonna use Zoom or another platform where the program is completely online. And we have the Saturday seminars. These seminars are recorded by our mentors who have experience in TCTSY for many years and different areas like attachment neuroscience, inclusion, intersectionality, and all those the topics that Jen mentioned. And we're also gonna have like every Saturday a TCTSY session focused on the topic we're gonna be covering on the seminar for that week. Also, you'll have 1 hour per week meeting with your peer group. So when you join the CERT program, you will be assigned to a peer group. That group can be around 2, 3, or 4 people. And you're gonna be meeting with that group once a week. That hour will be agreed between you and your group. So we're gonna try that all of you are in the same or similar time zone and you find like a common time when you can meet. We will also have a drop-in with the leadership. We have around 3 or 4 meetings a year where you can just connect with the leadership. You can ask questions about the research they've done, the experience they have, or other topics on TCTSY, and you will be assigned with a mentor. This mentor will be working close to you from September to March. Your mentor will be like reading your discussions, will be joining some of the meetings with your peer group, and will give you 3 hours of individual mentorship through the third year, okay? Talking a little bit about the requirements for the TCTSY certification, we require that all of you attend or listen the weekly seminars. Those seminars are recorded, so you can watch those seminars in your convenience anytime. Those seminars will be released on Saturday, and we recommend that you watch the seminar every week because your meetings, your peer group meetings, and your meetings with the mentors are going to be based on that seminar, on that topic. You will have a bi-weekly reflection, so you have to work on a written reflection the first part of the CERT program. If writing is not something that feels available to you, you can talk to your mentor and we can find like different options or different possibilities that we can apply. But we basically invite students to reflect on the seminar and kind of prove in a written way that you watch the seminar and you understand the basic concepts we're discussing. We will ask you to regularly participate in your peer groups meeting. Those meetings are obligatory. So as Jen mentioned, like this certification program is based in the relationship. So this is not a program you can do like recorded and in your own pace and just complete it when you want. We require that you're in relationship with your peer group, with your mentor, because this is the way we share TCTSY. TCTSY is relational. And we need that you learn to be present, to learn, to be engaged with your group so you get ready and prepared to give this methodology and to share this methodology. In the second part, when we're going to be working with the practical part, we're going to ask you to record around 8 to 10 videos. That's going to be up to the student and up to the mentor, but that's the way you're going to be showing your mentor that you're learning the different aspects of facilitation, okay? This can also change. This can also be like live sessions with your mentor where you teach your mentor, right? But the way we've been doing it all these years is through videos. You will also have 3 hours of individual mentorship. We're going to start those mentorships at the end of November, beginning of December, and then you're going to have the other meetings, the second half, where you're going to discuss with your mentor all the feedback regarding those videos and also all the feedback regarding your final paper or final project, which is another requirement we have for this third program. What is that final project about? You're going to find the topic that you are interested or you're passionate about or you like, and you will prove in that final project in a research, in a proposal, or there are different possibilities that you understood all the elements of TCTSY, all the 4 elements, and you know how to apply it in a topic that you're interested. And you'll also be required to sign and submit the ways of being, which is like our ethical document where we have like the ways we want facilitators relate and, practice this profession. And I think that's all, right? Do you want to share something, Jen or Karen, about this part? No?
Yeah, I mean, just to chime in a little bit, about, what Krystal is talking about around, one thing that we've kind of learned is that the sort of study group is a great place to practice this approach and this, even to integrate the ways of being, to look at power dynamics, to look at the ways that we share space with folks, to how we show up. And so we'll invite you into that process from the beginning, because really without a relationship that is, one where there's power sharing, where we really tend to the expert-driven ways that trauma can kind of mimic, or where the therapeutic relationship can mimic trauma, it's such a great container to practice that in. And your supervisor will too, or your mentor will too. We'll really show up as mentors in the space of guiding, but not as experts, right? We're all curious together in this process of learning and co-learning.
Thank you, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking a little bit about the structure on dates, our certification program starts or begins on September 7th and ends on March 22nd. We're going to have our opening weekend on September 7 and 8. As you know, the applications open on January 15. Acceptance will be sent as we review the applications, and you have to accept your application 2 weeks after you receive your letter. And then during the summer, we're going to be working in structuring the program, and our opening weekend is September 7 and 8. We're going to have a 2 weeks break in December, around December 15, and we will come back for the second practical part of the third program in January 8, and our ending date is March 22nd. I will pass the word to my colleague Karen to talk about who can apply to this program.
Thank you. My name is Karen Schwartz. I'm the Director of Operations for Center for Trauma and Embodiment. I'm a certified TCTSY facilitator since 2016 and have a background teaching yoga, doing yoga therapy, and also in social work. So who can apply to the program? Traditionally, we worked with 200-hour certified yoga professionals and licensed mental health care providers, and we have expanded our student base because there is so much need and so many people interested. So in addition to those two categories, you might be another type of healthcare professional. You might be a community provider working with individuals within communities that have experienced trauma. For us, that means working within an organization that can support your work. You might be a massage therapist or a fitness professional. One thing to keep in mind is that we are looking for you to have some scope of practice that serves as a container for your work. In terms of prior training, we do require that everyone completes either a 20-hour or 40-hour foundational training in TCTSY. One reason that's so important, because we do have lots of folks apply who have extensive backgrounds working with trauma, PhDs in mental health, but our approach is unique, and it's important that you have a sense of it and that it feels like something that you want to pursue, because the certification program is a big investment of time and energy and money. So we want to make sure that it feels like a good fit for you. In terms of costs and finances, the tuition is $3,600 US. In an effort to make this a little bit more easeful financially, we ask for a deposit of $600 within 2 weeks of your acceptance to the program. And then we have a payment plan of $600 a month every 30 days after that until your balance is paid off. That's an automatic payment plan. So once you send your deposit, you'll be entering your payment information, and there'll be an automatic deduction made, and you'll get an email notification a couple of days before the payment comes due saying, hey, just a reminder, your payment is gonna come due. We offer a limited number of $500 tuition assistance grants. Once you're accepted into the program, you'll be welcome to send an email briefly describing your financial need. The grants committee will review those requests and make decisions. The deadline for those requests is June 1st, so they'll make decisions between June 1st and just before June 15th, which is the date that you would be able to get a full refund on everything that you've paid so far, if you decide that that is the option that you need. We offer 5 diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships each year. The DEI scholarships are of great interest to folks. We get a lot of applications every year, a lot of really worthy applications, and we have this limited number. So we spend a lot of time really kind of poring over the applications and trying to make the best determinations we can, distributing these scholarships globally and in a variety of different communities. You can find the information on our website, but the idea behind the DEI scholarships is to really expand the reach of the TCTSY program, address existing health disparities, particularly in underserved communities. And we find that the scholarships are best utilized by providers who come from the same or similar community or cultural milieu as the people that they want to serve. The deadline for the applications is March 1st. You must first apply to and be accepted into the TCTSY certification program as a whole before you can apply for the scholarship. So that means you have to complete your foundational training and be accepted before you can apply for the DEI. Again, that deadline is March 1st. You'll need to provide 2 reference letters. We have to have all the application materials at the same time. And then the first round of determinations for folks who will not receive the scholarship will be made at the end of April, and then final determinations by mid to late May. There'll be a series of interviews for people who are being considered, and after that, the determinations. So I see questions. I don't know if they're only to me. Just going to pause for a moment. Yes. Oh, okay. What is the acceptance rate for the certification program? If you meet the requirements, generally speaking, you will be accepted. There would have to be some kind of a red flag in your application. But if you meet the requirements and do the foundational training, we generally accept most people who apply. The North American cohort tends to go to a waiting list by sometime in March, but we have a very good track record of admitting just about everybody who applies. So we really try to accommodate everyone who really wants to work with us. So again, Krystal assigned us all the different categories that we're going to talk about. So I'm just looking at my list to make sure I've got everything covered. But again, something that Jenn mentioned, the certification is based on creating and deepening relationships with partners and mentors. It's a hybrid program that provides live sessions along with self-study, but it's not self-paced. So, we do have a timeline that we expect you to follow. And in case you're wondering if, where this practice is utilized, it is utilized in every kind of place you can imagine. In addition to yoga studios or community centers or settings, TCTSY is being offered in domestic violence shelters, in prisons. We have a really interesting program offering TCTSY in refugee camps in the Middle East. It's offered in psychiatric settings. As you will learn from both foundational training and the certification program, trauma does not discriminate. It's everywhere. Therefore, we do our best to bring TCTSY to as many places as we can. And I think that is it. We have 4 cohorts for our program. We have the North American cohort. We have the European cohort. We have the Australasian cohort, Australia and the Far East. And we also have a Spanish community cohort, which functions sort of parallels the same program, but it's in Spanish, and it runs the same way alongside our English speaking program. So I think that's all for my list of assigned topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned the important dates. I'm just going to remind the timeline or the important dates in case you want to take notes, but all this information is in the website. January 15th, general applications opened. March 1st is the DEI scholarship due date. April 11th, candidates will be contacted for interviews. May 20, scholarship recipients will receive an award notification, and June 15, scholarship recipients must confirm their enrollment in the program. This is more like for DEI applicants, but I invite you to check the requirements and be sure that you have all the requirements, and if you feel those requirements, send the application and mark that option in your application. Want to say something, Karen?
I do, sorry. I just realized with Petra's question about the acceptance rate, in total, we generally accept about 200 applicants per year. It partly depends on how many mentors we have available and what capacity they have for taking on students, but about 200 separate from the Spanish community, which can be anywhere from 25 to 30.
If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or write in the chat, and we will be happy to answer. That's a good question, Veronica. This year we're exploring the possibility of having Latinx people living in the US, having an affinity group of people who wants to teach in both languages. depending on the language you use most, we recommend you join that program, you know, and especially if you read in English, if you study in English, if that's your main language, you should be in the English cohort. If you learned easily in Spanish, I recommend you to be in the Spanish cohort. It's exactly the same program. It's just the difference is the language. This year, I worked with some students who teach in both languages, and we kind of made like an arrangement of practice videos in 2 languages. That's a possibility. So write down that in other comments in your application, so we can just consider that. But for learning, because this is about learning to teach, I recommend that you join the cohort with the language you feel more comfortable reading and practicing and sharing with others in your peer group. Okay. If you're based in East Asia, there's another question here. If I will be based in East Asia, which cohort will I be placed in? It's the Australasian cohort. But all of you will apply the same way, okay? You just have to mark in your application what cohort do you prefer, and we will pair you with a mentor in your area, okay? Let's see. Is the ethical document you talked about on your website? Yes, we have the ways of being in the website, or it's just for the students when they graduate? I'm not sure about that, Karen.
It's on the website. I just added it. Yep. So you can see that. It really was a powerful process for us too, to try to create something that isn't just a document that is like, okay, I sign this and I'll follow the ethical. It truly is something that we try to integrate into the program and is a way of being with one another.
I'll read another question, maybe Jen, you can answer to it. When you say foundational 200-hour certification, do you mean as I've never been a yoga teacher, or do you mean foundational to TCTSY?
So there is, right, great. So there's a foundational 20-hour TCTSY training. When we're talking about a certification, it's like if you're coming in as a yoga practitioner and that's your scope of practice, then you would have a 200-hour YTT, could be from anywhere. So those are 2 separate things, but they're sort of like, we want people to come in that have a scope of practice. They're already operating in with their yoga practitioner, the things Karen talked about, and then also having completed a foundational training. We have a bunch of them online. We can put a link to that here as well. Some are in person, and they are around the world.
I would like to make a note on the foundational training. You can send your application even if you don't have the foundational training, but your application will be reviewed once you completed it, okay? So you can fill it right now, but when you complete your foundational training, we're gonna revise your application because you're gonna have the pre-requirements. I have another question here. As a mental health therapist, do we need to get certified as yoga teacher? No, you don't need to be certified. You can apply as yoga instructor, mental health professional, massage fitness therapist, or community provider. Do you have any other question? Feel free to share it in the chat or open your mic. You're welcome to do that too.
Yeah, it's different. Great question. Is the foundational training similar to the foundational weightlifting training? They're very different. There may be some themes, because we all operate under the same approach to trauma. for sure. You know, there's commonality, but a lot of folks have actually done both, or a fair amount have done both certifications, and they are very different because the approach is different. Because weightlifting is really looking to expand the window of tolerance, and we have a different approach. We're looking to turn inward and create opportunities for interoception. So they have a very different way of interacting with embodied trauma.
Okay, is there a minimum amount of teaching hours that you need to have? You mean like, I don't know if you're asking about the 200 hours. We don't require like a teaching hours minimum, okay? We're not gonna ask you how many hours you thought. We just ask for the certification or the qualification from your mental health or other profession that qualify for the CERT program. If there is a question comes to mind, who should we contact after this? We're gonna share our emails here, like Karen and my email and Jen's too, in the chat. And you're welcome to write to us if you have any other question. We have another one here. You want to read it, Jenn?
Yeah, that was a great question about, working with perinatal population. Is there a module included in that? So we don't have a specific module for that, but we have certain mentors, a couple come to mind who are very experienced in that. And so if you were to put in your application, this is an area of focus, we could easily, I can't say easily, we would try our best to pair you with a mentor that has that scope. We're really intentional about kind of who we put people with. Of course, it depends on schedules and time zones and things, but each mentor brings their own scope and their own area of expertise. So we try to be intentional about that as well.
That's also one of the things that people often focus on for their final projects. If they have a specific interest, they do their own research about that, and usually often will develop an idea for a program or a practice that they can then actually implement in their work.
Making sure we don't have any other questions, and we can pause here too, just to see if there's anything else that arises. Great. Yeah, do you have something, Karen? Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, that's something else to add. If just to let people know that once you complete the certification program, you're automatically certified for 2 years. And after that, you're welcome to renew annually if that's of interest. We provide, as part of your certification, we provide continuing education seminars at no cost to you to deepen your practice, and that you can use those for the continuing education requirement for recertification. We also have an annual conference on trauma and embodiment. Ours is coming up in the beginning of April, our 4th annual conference. That also satisfies our continuing education requirement. And of course, you can use outside trainings as well.
Great. I'm just going to pop that in the chat too, if you're interested. I have a strong bias, but of course I love our conference because we have we really try to center people that are doing the work that often don't get in the trauma circuit. There's sort of like a trauma circuit that happens of people that are providers out there that are prominent in the field, and really trying to connect with other community providers that are doing this embodied work in really innovative and creative ways. So I just love that thing. Okay, great. Some more questions. Is there a governing board for the credentials? I want to make sure I understand that, but we hold that at this moment. So in terms of, is that what, do you want to answer that, Karen?
I'm not sure if you mean if it qualifies for for licensure. So our program is accredited by Yoga Alliance as a 300-hour yoga school. So if you are a 200-hour yoga teacher, once you complete this training, you can use it to become a 500-hour yoga teacher. We are currently doing some battle with National Association of Social Workers, who accredited us for several years in the past, but there's been a movement across the board within social work to move away from approving yoga programs for continuing education. And we are trying very hard to prove to them that we are much more than what they probably think of as a yoga program, because we have so much evidence base, we have so much research, and we have so much to offer that is within the scope of social work. But right now, we don't offer social work credits. We have had folks in other license categories, like licensed mental health counselors, have been able to petition on their own to use the program for continuing education, and we can provide any kind of documentation or materials that might be useful for that. So that might be what you're thinking about.
Great question came in here, right? Do you have requirements for the practitioners of your method? They only use your method? Absolutely not. We, we understand that you are going to do this training and you probably are curious in doing other trainings, and we invite you to try on this model when you're in this and this approach, but going into the world and doing it in a way that actually meets the person where they're at. It's actually quite important to us to not be in any kind of like purist mindset. We know that truly the priority is what serves the client, which is often eclectic of pieces of different approaches, and figuring that out in an individual relationship or different groups and communities you're working with. But what we do ask is that folks don't then go train in this. So sometimes folks who have taken this as practitioners, we do have certified trainers and there's a pathway to that. But that you don't take this content and turn it around and start your own certification program, let's say, or your own training program. But in terms of what you do in the world, we support you in integrating and using your knowing and knowledge to serve the people that you work with.
Although we do ask that if you are offering TCTSY, it is recognizable as TCTSY, so that it's not TCTSY with a little bit of this thrown in and a little bit of that thrown in at the same time. Is that right, Jen?
I don't agree, actually. That might be confusing.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah. No, I think that, what happens, I think that folks are doing all kinds of things in practice that are integrating and doing pieces of this and not. And, there can be value in creating a container where you're just doing TCTSY, but then some people are going to integrate it. So I'd probably take a different stance on it, which is part of how we operate. It's like we're always looking to expand and question and get curious about how we show up in the world, this model, this approach, so that it is living and breathing as well. Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you all for being here on your Sunday, for your questions, your interest. We are available to you. Of course, if you have continuing questions or curiosities about the program. But thank you, and I hope that we get to see you and work with you in the fall.
Have a wonderful Sunday, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.